one of the things that really pisses me off about the whole thing, and awesome, that IGN's audience is totally dead set against all digital gaming. You would think that they would stop shilling Sony, given the reality, of their own audience now does not want this direction. Which also means we don't want to see you justify it. We want to see you attack it at every turn. And if you publish anything defending them, we want you to we want that person fired for daring to defend Sony's decision and kicked out of IGN. No tolerance for any perspective defending Sony's decision whatsoever. Not even if they justify it, not even if physical buyers are fucking 0.0000001% of the market. We don't care. We don't want to hear any defense of it. We want to hear relentless criticism of it and nothing but that. That's it. That's all we want to hear. We want to hear their perspective that's on the attack against it. Nothing in defense of it. So you're not welcome to publish articles defending Sony's decision. But the thing that really has me about all this and just angry about all of it is that as one of those people that has been, like literally the last physical game I bought was last Thursday. Or like that, so on the 20th, just 3 days ago. 3 days. And it was Final Fantasy Resonance that I bought, and a pre-order at everything. I am part of that core audience that now buys physical, but of course, when I buy physical, I don't usually go into GameStop to buy it. I just pre-order it directly from Square Enix. You know, I now have that, direct relationship with them as a company. A large part of me prefers doing it because then all that money, there's no money flowing to middlemen in that situation. It's all going to Square Enix in that case, and that's where it belongs as far as I'm concerned. So I like buying it from Square Enix directly so that the developers get every cent of that whole thing. And I like things that way. I like to think that way. Anyways, the thing about all this that has me so livid is that, PlayStation only sees the numbers. They see the number of people buying digital versus the people buying physical on the PlayStation console, but they never stop to ask, why is this the case? Why are people doing this? Why is this? And if they had asked me like why aren't you buying PlayStation games? I'll be like, well, I'm certainly not buying digital ones either from you guys. You you haven't produced jack diddly fucking shit that I want. The only thing that I own from you at all anymore is Metaphor Refantazo, because that is the only thing, and I only got that because, not because I wanted to actually play it, but because, I'd already played it on the PC, and so it was like, here's a thank you for the whole thing to Atlas as a company. Like I downloaded it, on my PC, and so the as far as IGN is concerned, like, all these numbers and everything, as a physical buyer and everything, and as somebody that's always bought physical and hasn't changed at all, and has stayed like a shot, you just completely straight through like that through the era and everything, and sees no reason to change just because everybody else did. Sees no reason to do so. Doesn't think that everybody, if everybody else decided to run out to jump off a cliff, would I join them in that? No. So, the fact that everybody else is embracing digital doesn't mean that I should. No reason for me to change just because that's the direction things are moving in. None. That does not mean that I should change at all. You know, I really don't care. And so, you know, you know, these like little like excuses. Digital games carry essentially 100% incremental margin. The cost of the physical package, shipping, and retailer margins can be more than 20% and a sticker price. Like, okay, sure, but why don't you just increase the price of the physical game then? If you wanna if you wanna charge me more to have physical, fine. Because you want me to have to pay for the cost of it and everything, fine. You know. And they're like, if gamers and preservationists had bought more physical games, Sony would have seen the digital sales ratios that justify that decision. Robin Yazoo's game, analyst at Bernstein told the Financial Times. But the problem at Sony is that Sony just isn't making the kinds of games that I want to play. They're just not making the games that I actually want. I mean, like I told you, I just bought, two copies of Final Fantasy Resonance because, I've been bitching very loudly about the fact that Final Fantasy went over to, ended their turn-based, past and, became a fucking, action RPG. I don't like this direction. I don't like the changes to the combat system at all, and everything. So, I've been bitching about this, alienating myself from the Square Enix fandom in the process by saying Final Fantasy should go back to being a turn-based game and everything. And now I got a chance to actually have a turn-based Final Fantasy for the first time in 10 years. And of course, I'm jumping on it to help it succeed and everything. But, you look at this and Sony's asking why, Sony's blaming us for not buying physical games, and the truth of the matter is that we're not buying physical games from Sony because Sony isn't making the games we want to play. Like I've got a whole library of Nintendo Switch, games in the other room, and everything, a big shelf full of them, and yet I don't have very many Sony games because Sony just, they haven't really been making games for me. And, if I have something like Octopath Traveler, I have it on the Switch too, or the Switch, you know, and in the meantime, Sony has been just like, they haven't been producing the games that I want, so why would I be buying them in physical form? See, the problem is that I haven't been buying physical or digital from Sony, you know? Like they've really just got nothing that I want, and so that may be why the numbers reflect the reality that they do, you know.